I love obscure content and lore. To those familiar with my videos, this isn't a new fact for me. TF2 is absolutely loaded with obscure information that is way more entertaining than it has any right to be. Every aspect of the game, no matter if it's the game itself or the lore, has several small hidden nuggets of information to the point where even 12 years into the game's life, people are still learning about it. However, the lifespan of the game is also a problem, with not only how long it's been out, but also the fact that it's gotten very little updates in the past 4 years. A majority of these obscure bits have either been covered by other content creators or absolutely beaten to death by many. The point here is that it's become very hard to find things that have yet to be discussed. One thing I don't think anyone has ever talked about are these postcards that appeared in the Tough Break update attached to the contracts Miss Pauling sent you. Anything that has to do with Pauling or more world building is something that immediately piques my interest, especially if it breaks chronological continuity. Many of you may find this a stretch for an entire video, and yeah, I'd agree with you, but for those of you craving TF2 content from me, this is what you get. An entire video about talking and analyzing the origins of freaking postcards from various sites around the Badlands. So here we go. Tough Break was essentially the 2015 Smissmas update, which included many aspects of a major update. I said major. That's a better example, minus the new weapons. The theme of the Tough Break update was that of Miss Pauling being forced to take a federally mandated vacation from work. Being the workaholic she is, though, Miss Pauling gets around a work-free vacation by sending the mercenaries contracts in the form of tourist destination postcards from the Badlands. The update featured 9 different postcards that could show up on the in-game contracts. These postcards showcased what was considered various scenic destinations of the Badlands. These ranged from the misplaced Alamo to Scout's Tom Jones Museum. Almost all of these are references to existing lore or in some simple way connects easily to the TF2 universe, while others exist outside of the story's timeline. The first and most realistic destination is the newly relocated Alamo. Originally existing in San Antonio, Texas, the Alamo was rented and moved in 1972 by Redmond and Plutarch for the sole sake of acting as a meeting place for the two warring brothers in the comic Blood Brothers. Due to the fact that the two were killed by Gray during the meeting, the Alamo was evidently never moved back and became a new tourist destination to those visiting New Mexico. I'm sure this was something the state was ecstatic to get, since New Mexico doesn't exactly have any staple tourist attractions or well-known historical sites. Now, if you're familiar with the TF2 storyline, the first postcard will scream chronological inconsistency. The Alamo was moved at the beginning of the Robot Wars with Gray, which should take place well after Tough Break, which seemingly takes place during the Gravel Wars. The Gravel Wars takes place before the Robot Wars, since it was the war between Redmond and Plutarch. For sake of visualizing the timeline, the game TF2 takes place, or more so started, in 1969. Blood Brothers, which acted as the introduction to the Robot Wars and Man vs. Machine, takes place in 1972. Once the Robot Wars start, Red and Blue are dissolved, meaning there's no reason Miss Pauling would be able to give out the Merc contracts to kill the other teams or capture facilities. Many of these postcards are based on events that happened in the comics, and due to their chronological confliction, it helps to determine that the events of the comics and the games exist in separate continuities. Alternatively, you can cling onto the theory that TF2 is actually an over-dramatized documentary based on the Gravel Wars, as shown by the overuse of stereotypes with the Mercs, but that is not a topic for this video. The next 3 cards are also based on the comics, with 2 of them based on the ongoing comic storyline and even further disregards the timeline. Based on Unhappy Returns, the 2-4 bookfire seemingly began with Pyro and Pauling visiting the library to look for and destroy records about the administrator. Pyro, being, well, a pyromaniac, starts the bookfire in the library, but according to the postcard, it has not only grown, but also been moved out front. There's not much to say with this one except that a library toting a bookfire as an attraction actually makes sense for a town full of lead-poisoned idiots. On the other hand, Scout may as well have lead poisoning since he spent his life savings on Tom Jones memorabilia, and apparently opened up the most pitiful museum in the Badlands. Then again, for all we know, this is the best museum in the Badlands. The last postcard that's pulled directly from the comics is Twofort's Raccoon Sanctuary. Originally Marasmus's castle and home, the Raccoon Sanctuary was accidentally made when Soldier took over the castle while Marasmus was out and hid sour cream everywhere, which ended up attracting the entire raccoon population of Twofort. The government recognized this and labeled it as a sanctuary, effectively evicting Marasmus from his home and inadvertently killing him after astral projecting himself out of anger, letting Soldier burn his body. Of course, he ends up coming back from the dead, but I'm sure seeing his castle ransacked by raccoons gives him a borderline heart attack. Speaking of Marasmus, it seems like he kept up his ancient haunted Sumerian carnival from Scream Fortress 2014. Marasmus seems to still be desperately trying to pay off what he owes the Yakuza, with what I assume is limited success. I mean, would you really want to go to a haunted soul-stealing carnival year-round? Maybe the medic, for the sole reason of stealing Marasmus' soul collection and living forever, but I don't think I would. In line with thrilling attractions is Poopy Joe's Rapid Descent, a log flume based on the entire storyline involving an astronaut monkey, a rigged rocket launch, Australium, and a cover-up by the administrator. That story, in and of itself, is a bit of a doozy to get into for those unfamiliar with the event, but it led to the special delivery game mode and infamously the map Doomsday. This postcard in particular piques my curiosity, because surely there isn't just a log flume sitting in the middle of the Badlands. So this must be part of a theme park, right? Is there a Twofort land somewhere? Can I ride Mr. Mundy's wild ride? Please let me ride that. The last three cards are all clearly related to TF2 in the Badlands, but aren't necessarily connected to specific events. Miss Pauling was more or less obligated to visit a Manco site on this vacation, and that's what the Recall Depot is for. While this card doesn't seem to be based on anything in particular, I think it was inspired by the comic The Contract, which features manufacturing blunders such as the legendary Double Force of Nature. It wouldn't be Manco if they didn't try to squeeze every last bit of money out of their potential customers, no matter the safety rating of the product. Another postcard that could have been based on a comic is Granny's Bomb Factory. Theoretically, the idea of a factory that only makes payloads could have been derived by the made-up payload charity from the Smithmas comic. Granted, TF2 isn't the first thing to do stylized bomb factories.
Oh, these aren't homemade, they were made in a factory. A bomb factory. They're bombs.
The last Twofort tourist trap is Slurry Beach, which is a very fitting one once you realize what slurry actually is. Slurry is a semi-liquid mixture of usually water and small particles of things like cement, gravel, or coal. Consistency-wise, think along the lines of oatmeal and grits. Now imagine swimming in that. To make matters worse, or better, in terms of the context of Slurry Beach existing, slurry is often used to transport solids between places from processing plants, factories, and mines. With all the fighting at facilities, I wonder how many body parts are found washed up on the beach. This means people leisurely swimming at Slurry Beach are probably swimming in a transport river between facilities, or they're swimming in runoff. Sounds like a refreshing dip to me. So yeah, it seems the Badlands are ripe with interesting tourist attractions, even though I find half of these to be barely considered legitimate attractions. If they have a postcard, then they can be counted. Ironically, Scout's sad excuse for a museum is the only one that's not unusual.